dollars being sent in by the federal government to do many things. But we still have a transportation problem, transportation for our seniors. They should have door-to-door pickup and take home, and they don't. What would you do to change it? That's one. My other question is about seniors also, but if you can go ahead and answer my transportation problem, what would you do if you were a commissioner in Bear County and had all this money that comes in from the government for these programs, and it comes to the county, and it's distributed down to the city, but it first comes to the county, and we're not doing anything. What would you do? And my question is, I'm gonna start out with you, Brad. If you guys, we've had several conversations, but this is a very important conversation. If we had transportation for seniors, think how much money could circulate. Seniors have money they can't even spend in San Antonio and in Bear County. Think what would happen. Jobs would open. So many things would happen. So tell me, what would you do? What would you do? We had no one in the past to do anything, so.
Tell me, was she
Brad.
You're asking it to
What would you do
Grant or just a
as
vote?
a commissioner?
Okay, I guess I'll just go ahead.
Loud, please speak loud. I can't hear you, I'm sitting right here and I haven't been able to hear you all night.
Well, I appreciate the question, and I know this has been an issue that you're passionate about. And I assume that we're talking specifically around seniors who would not have access to other public transportation that already exists, right? So in that specific case, I think you need to, listen, I'm a business person, I think you gotta understand the problem first, right? And that would be how I approach any one of these problems. So how many seniors fall into that category? Where do they live? What are our potential options to address that? What do they cost? What budget buckets would that come out of? And then start putting together options and put them on the table. So I don't have a specific answer for you tonight, but that would be generally how I approach the problem. And you know, I would be open to any of these issues that come from constituents in Precinct 3 or around the entire county, and trying to address them going forward.
Thank you.
That's fair.
Ms. Susan?
So as you know, I have a consumer research company, and VIA has right now a secret shopper RFP out. That means a request for proposal to do secret shopping. One of the things reasons I have not applied to do that, well, I'm kind of busy right now, but one of the things that they said was in the RFP was to determine what were the limitations for seniors that they are unable to use the services that are presently provided. I'm assuming that you have tried to call in to use VIA, and it has not been satisfactory.
None of them are successful. None of them are successful.
So that's where we start. That's where we start is, why are they not successful? Was it because they dropped you off in the wrong place? Or is it because the timing was bad? So what were the reasons why it was not successful? That's where I want to go with this, is I want to find out what it is that makes this a problem for you, and then find a way that we can make it better. Was it timing?
It's not just a problem for me, it's a problem for about 250,000 seniors in Bear County. I'm not talking personally, however, we could do a campaign, and you could say transportation for Betty if you want to.
Well,
we're going to take it to Austin.
But we got
to take it to Washington eventually.
And we got to know exactly.
I'm trying to find out, what do you know about seniors? What do you know about seniors?
Well, I am one.
There's been nothing, I haven't seen any anything done. I haven't seen any movement. And it's not just that, we have a food insecurity problem. The same thing, we've got seniors without food. We receive money to the county, to send food to seniors, not to have them get in line with a car at the San Antonio Food Bank to get food. Are we gonna buy everybody a new car so that they can go to the San Antonio Food Bank and get the few little things that are given away from people that they don't want, the food they don't want, the restaurants they don't want and don't need? None of this has been covered. Senior issues have not been covered in San Antonio. I hear adults, I hear children, I hear battered women.
Point of order,
I hear all these things. But I do not hear any of these things.
Betty, we're speechifying.
I'm sorry, but I had to get it out.
Okay. That's,
If I don't
you
get
get
it
it.
out, it will never be said in San Antonio, and I'll continue to say it at every meeting I go to. People
You said it, thank
can
you.
go into the meeting if they want to.
I didn't want to hear a question there.
Until they do, I'm
Yeah.
gonna continue to make sure
Okay,
that people
all
are
right.
aware of the senior issues in San Antonio and Bear County.
All right.
So my quick
Pretty bad.
answer is, for every issue, we find out exactly where the tension is, and then we solve those problems together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could just add a little bit of input here, I shared Betty's concerns. VIA only operates within the city limits. If you live in Hollywood Park or Converse or one of these areas, there's no VIA city bus. Outside of the city limits, again, Bear County, there's no VIA. We have ACOG, which provides services for seniors in the counties that are around Bear County. But again, what Betty is alluding to is that there is a area there that doesn't get much service. So these are some gaps in services for seniors. Also, Meals on Wheels exists, but their funding probably needs to be increased quite a bit because as the senior population has grown, there continues to be a wait list to get into those services. So just to supplement what Betty was saying, I wanted to add that in there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah,
For both candidates, what changes would you seek in state law and state code that affect how the county operates?
yeah,
So as we delve into this idea of the Bear County Housing Trust, there are many pieces of the puzzle that right now the county isn't able to engage in terms of planning and some of the other preliminary requirements. And so while I talked with Judge Wolf about this, that this is a major priority, and he has told me, you're gonna have to work with the legislature because there's a great deal of opportunity, but there are some obstacles. And because I have a number of friends who are running for the State House, but also I used to work in the State House. I had a news service there called Southwest International News Service. I've spent a lot of time in Austin, and I presume that I'll be spending a lot more time there. I also was a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and so I'm relatively familiar with the sludge and how slow it goes. But that doesn't mean that we can't start sometime.
So I'm generally a believer in federalism and local control. But to your question, you know, some of the things that we've already touched on, you know, property tax reform at the state level, being able to buy down those O&M budgets, I think would be a huge help for taxpayers around the state. And so I think that's one thing that I would advocate for. And then I don't know if it's public, so I won't tie it to anybody's name, but I do believe that there's going to be some bills in the legislative session around, you know, the proper manning for law enforcement in counties around the state. And again, I think it would be best if counties ultimately met the responsibility for public safety themselves. But you know, for a county that's not providing that public safety or that minimum staffing requirement and that level is obviously yet to be determined, then I think that's an issue. And you know, if the state has to step in and make sure and provide that for all of our citizens in the state of Texas, then I think that's a reasonable position.
Yeah.
I don't know if this affects you or if it's under your jurisdiction, but like we got, 16 or 17 different school districts here in San Antonio. Why can't you combine them all, reduce the salaries of accounting officers, superintendents, and save money through taxes that way? That's for both of you.
Go ahead, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for you there. It's an interesting thought. It's something I haven't heard before. Clearly, I don't think you know, most taxpayers care about tax dollars going to educate our children, right? I think where a lot of the frustration comes into play is when there's excess in terms of administration or facilities and other things that are clearly nice to haves, but somebody's paying for them and those funds aren't ending up in the classroom, right? And so I think that's what you're talking to right there, right? When you have a lot of administration and overhead, like you can consolidate it. So it's an interesting thought. It may be really, really challenging to try to implement, but I would piggyback off that comment and say that one of the things we've heard more and more in a lot of these races for county government, and we'll probably hear them in city races in the future, is talking about the redundancy between city services and county services and how there's overlap there that, you know, if we consolidate those services, eliminate those redundancies, we could save dollars and provide a more efficient government. So I think that's something I really want to explore, and I think I've heard from Susan as well.
Yeah, I personally, coming from the education world, I was just appalled when I got to San Antonio and saw how many school districts there are. Now, we know how those school districts came about. We know that there is a great deal of resistance to that. No, the county isn't directly supposed to be involved in it. I, on a personal level, think it's obscene to have so many superintendents and assistant superintendents when what we really need to do is get back to finding enough money for the teachers to do what they have to do. Now, we agree totally on consolidation in different ways, but how you get to it, and Mr. Cryer in the back knows that in the past, there have been a lot of people who tried really hard to do any kind of consolidation between county and city. My feeling is that there's a great deal of cooperation that could be possible. As for what's going on with the school districts, I will do whatever I can as county commissioner to encourage that kind of consolidation, but I don't know that I would have a very big voice in that.
Thank you.
Patrick, you had a question?
I do. One of the major quality of life issues happening in Bexar County right now is the influx of illegal aliens. And the city has opened a migrant services center that's now transferred over to management of the Catholic Charities. And there's talk about the county doing the same thing. What's your feeling on that, and how you would, how you feel about it, how you would see it, like to see it implemented if it does go through?
I haven't heard that talk about the county doing that. My feeling is that we are in a situation where we are a midpoint between people and between different worlds. I personally think that there's no reason why we can't have a whole lot more judges hearing amnesty cases right down at the border when they come in and deal with it right then. I don't know why we don't put a lot of money into that. It has nothing to do with county commissioners. What I do think is that we are in a position right now where if the flow happens quickly between where people have come and where they're going to go, I encourage that flow, because I think that we are not in a situation where we should be the end point for everybody that seems to be wanting to come to the United States.
Yeah, so clearly immigration is supposed to be a federal issue. But there's been an abdication by the current administration in terms of enforcing the border. And you see it with over 2 million illegal immigrants come across the border in the past year. And so, you know, obviously at the state level, Operation Lone Star and others trying to deal with this issue at the state level in Texas, in Arizona, and other states. But ultimately, this is a federal issue that needs to be taken care of, and I hope that we change course, because this is a humanitarian issue, is what it really is. And you know, a lot of times you talk to different parties and you get branded as heartless and anti-immigrant. No, we are a country of immigrants, but there's a front door, and you have to come in the front door, not the back door. And when we have an open border, and we have, you know, 53 immigrants dead in the back of a tractor trailer right here in this county, that's a humanitarian crisis. There are immigrants dying out there because of the policies at the border, and we need to get a handle on it, and we need to address it. Specifically to the Migrant Center, you know, when I think that there's an issue generally if you are continuing to facilitate the flow and encourage it, that you're only going to get more of the same. And so I think we need to address it, and I definitely wouldn't expand the problem by adding another county migrant center.
Thank you.
Question way back here. Right there.
I have a question for you. Does the county have plans to address the elder law, or the abuse of the elderly as the aging population continues in the county? Exploitation of finances, that kind of thing. Is there a program that they're addressing? Are they increasing the court investigators for the program?
Well, this will be short because I don't know, but it's clearly something we should take a look at and look at the trends and how those folks, what their current paths to addressing that are. You know, whether that's through local law enforcement or other options on the table. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
The only program that I'm aware of right now, other than the few county investigators between the two county courts, the two probate courts, is the adult protective services through the state. So, but it's increasing with our aging population. So.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I met with the probate judges for quite a while and was overwhelmed by their overwhelmed dockets, and one of them being elder care. And honestly, I am shocked at how, as we are growing older, all of us, we don't have something in place that's much more of a clear path to get help. And as the judges were talking to me, it was very clear that that was going to be one place where I would indeed want to expand the resources that they have.
Thank you.
As the Texas legislative session approaches, and the county is going to approve a legislative agenda to take to the state, what's one thing you would like to see the county add to the agenda? It's one thing you would like to make sure it's not on the agenda that you might have heard that the county's considering.
Depends on who's up there. Okay, I'm going to be real honest with you. I don't like SB1. I want it gone. I think that we need to make voting easier, not harder. I also, as I was telling you about the Bexar County Housing Trust, there are many smaller pieces of the ability for counties to do good work in terms of working with developers that I would like to see in place. I don't have anybody on the team, well, I have two that are running for office, but they're not in there yet, who have talked with me about how we can get those done. But those would be my priorities, helping the county get more involved in housing and getting rid of SB1.
Well, I I don't know what the list looks like today, but, you know, I'd go back to, again, the property tax reform, to me, is a priority for the state. It's clearly in their court. It's a huge impact on all Bexar County citizens, and so I would prioritize that at the state level. And, again, potentially to the whole law enforcement manning levels, because I think that's critical as well.
Can I ask a follow-up, Art? How do you feel about taxpayer-funded lobbyists and whether or not the county should be paying lobbyists to lobby for them versus the county commissioners and the county judge going up themselves as elected officials to represent us?
Having been one, it's very, very complicated for every single issue to be smart enough to do a good job as you're persuading people who are in the legislature. There are people who are lobbyists with facts, and there are people who are lobbyists with encouragement of different kinds. I think that we need smart people who can speak to each issue, and sometimes those smart people, you're laughing at persuasion.
Encouragement.
Yeah, encouragement. I have been sitting in a room in Washington while people walked by, and all I had was my briefing papers, and they had encouragement. There are many issue-specific experts, and I think that that's important. Now, it could be that we could keep them on our staff, but then that's a lot of overhead. I think it is because the legislature is not there the whole time. I think there are benefits in having issue-specific experts.
There may be some benefits in the expertise that was mentioned there, but I'm opposed to taxpayer-funded lobbying because, and there's going to be some lobbyists that hate me for that, but at the end of the day, it comes down to taxpayers, and taxpayers should not be having their tax dollars taken from them and then going to Austin and advocating against positions that they believe in. And so that's ultimately where I land on that.
Patty, you had a question before and I didn't call it.
That's all right. I serve on the county small minority women-owned business commission. Can't hear me? Okay. And on that commission, the Spurs, we work with different entities of the county, the hospital, and the Spurs, and Bexar County itself, to watch how well they're using small minority women-owned veteran businesses. The Spurs recently came before Commissioner's Court and said, hey, we kind of would like to modify our contract so we can have more games away from San Antonio. Well, we see that as a problem because there are so many small businesses that work with the Spurs at the AT&T Center that make money. So if the games start to go away from downtown and to Austin or Mexico, I think is where they want to go, that starts to affect small businesses. So if the Spurs were to come back and ask again to the Commissioner's Court, we'd like more games away as we continue to grow our, I don't know how they were putting it, grow our base or something, on the region, would you allow that modification to their contract a second time? And do you foresee in any way that the Spurs maybe are making some moves to eventually move to a better better region where they're going to make more money? Would we become like the Chargers of San Diego who went over to California?
Well, there is no better location for the Spurs than right here in San Antonio, right? No, you know, I followed this story last time, and the commitment by the team and owners that, you know, this is about expanding their presence and their following, but this was not in any way about moving the team. You know, was it 2 games or 4 games? I don't remember the specific 4, right? You know, that's one thing. You might be able to make that argument once, but if they were talking about, you know, 4's going to 8, 8's going to well. Be absolutely opposed to that. And, you know, I hope though that this is a good relationship that we maintain with the Spurs and their ownership and the players. I mean, they've been a part of San Antonio for forever. We want to keep them here. So maybe there's other issues that we can address in that and in contracts going forward. But I sure hope that, you know, besides a handful of games, that otherwise they're here in San Antonio and they're the San Antonio Spurs.
Well, would you maybe discuss compensation to the small businesses that did not make money those nights that you allowed those games to go elsewhere?
I would be open to seeing what that looks like for what those small businesses are and what the misses on revenue were. I mean, clearly if it's a legal obligation because they had a contract and now we're pulling that away from them by sending games elsewhere, then I think there's potentially an obligation to support that. If it's just goodwill, then I think, you know, let's have it on the table, see what those amounts are, and see if it makes sense, and we should support that. But generally, you know, I'm going to support small businesses because they're the backbone of our economy here in Bexar County, and Texas, and the United States.
Well, this is really complicated. You know, I worked with the Spurs. My father was a pro football player. I've been around pro athletes a lot. And what I do know about the business, and it is a business, is that it's very hard in a small metropolitan area for them to be able to attract the kind of talent that gets the outside endorsements compared to some of these larger markets. And so they're looking at it as a business decision so that then they have this spread up to Austin with endorsements. I believe that's part of it. The thing is, we did this for them. We built this. This is something that they owe us. Now, on a bigger scale, I'd rather see us have a professional soccer team. I'd rather us have lots of other teams. I grew up in Detroit. We had lots of pro teams, and I think it's important for those who are in positions of authority to try to go out and recruit other teams, recruit new business. I personally think that what the Spurs did for us is like a heartbeat. What we have with them is so important, and what we have given them through our tax dollars to build those facilities, they owe it to us until they decide that they don't want us at all. I'm sorry, I want them here. I want bigger businesses, and yes, every time we have a commitment with them, they have to obligate it. I'm also an SWB company, and I know that you fight hard for us. And we have to fight even harder in these days to make sure that none of these small businesses can ever go under. It's very important.
Okay, go ahead, one more. Patrick already had two. Go ahead.
So I'm kind of interested in this housing, Bexar County housing that you're talking about. Both Gary and I have served on the San Antonio Housing Trust. Gary served on the Housing Trust very early on when it really was a citizen board. That those dollars that came in, it was a small corpus of money because of the sale of Paragon Cable. That money was decided by a citizen board. When I came onto the board, this became a very large corporation of money, tons of money. And now the city decided to divide that board up, no longer to citizen board, but to have city council and maybe half citizen. What kind of a board are you considering? Because under a citizen board, those dollars are watched and those dollars are decided on what type of housing is going to be given. Under a city, San Antonio has citizen board, it's all favoring what the city agenda and mandates are on a larger scale of housing. So what is in your head as far as a Bexar County housing?
So I think we have to have citizens on it. I think we have to have members of the county commission on it. And I think we have to have the ability to hire people who are going to be administering the dollars, that it is the responsibility of the county to administer. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have citizens on it. I don't know that we can have all citizens, because otherwise they have to be responsible. They're the fiduciary responsibility, but they don't have the authority. So it has to be a mix. I'm sorry, I think it has to be a Monco.
Yeah.
Question for both candidates. The county has recently gotten involved in downtown beautification development projects via the San Pedro Creek project. You think that's an appropriate activity for the county and an appropriate use of county tax dollars?
Well, I was just down there with the opening of the data school. It's very nice. Obviously, we all have to be proud of our downtown area. I think that, I know that Peter Sakai has said he doubts that there will be that kind of investment into a lot of the art-related projects like there has been in the past. I personally, I use the parks a lot. I think that the county parks could use some help. And I'm having a couple of events in one of the parks on Halloween, if you're interested. But what I think is really important about investment into downtown is what I was talking about before about partnership. Yes, we have to have some partnership arrangements, but I don't know. Wow, thank you. We're going to be here a long time.
Thank you very much.
I don't know, as we start looking at all the problems in San Antonio, if we're going to, if I'm, and I will be on the county commission, if I'm going to start with beautification. I'm going to start with human services and public safety.
Yeah. Just in terms of budgeting, I think about budget bucket, right? You know, what are the first things that go in the bucket? You know, our sheriff's department, our court system, transportation dollars. And then, you know, if there's room for these other projects, then it's on a case-by-case basis. But I think that there has been wasteful spending in the past, that going forward we should be very judicious with taxpayers' dollars and what we invest that in. I don't know all the details of San Pedro Creek. I know we're talking about, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars out there in creeks, trails and parks and whatnot. We use parks too. I have 3 young kids. We love using the park system and everything else, but you also have to just think about that trade-off between the value any one of these projects provides the greater community versus the idea that we're going to pay for it by taking everyone's money away from them in order to pay for it. So just have to be diligent in screening projects and make sure that we think there's a real ROI for the community in order to invest in it.
I'll just follow up on that. I wanted to ask Grant, but a lot of these type of projects, and let's not say San Pedro since you weren't too familiar with that, but let's just say the land bridge. A lot of these type of large projects tend to have money that they're asking of you, the governmental entity, but they're going to be leveraged by some private dollars. How will you handle it when they come and say, but Grant, we're going to leverage $10 million from some private entity, so the county really isn't paying for the entirety of the project. How would you handle that type of situation in negotiations?
Yeah. I mean, no, I'd be pragmatic about it, right? If you're telling me, you know, whatever, it's the new UTSA soccer field or whatever the project may be, UTSA is gonna pay $10 million. The city is gonna pay $6 million, and the county's paying $1 million. Well, clearly, that's, we're getting an awfully, a valuable project to the community, to the college, for a limited investment by the county. You just have to assess each one of these projects. What is the cost share between the private sector, other public entities, and the county, in determining, what is that right balance? And obviously, it would depend on the individual project on what that would be, I think.
But the projects never stand alone. The project is ongoing. The San Pedro Creek, Linear Creekway was to be a drainage ditch redesigned. Now it became a huge park that both the city and the county have to tax us with. So you may say you're gonna look at just the project, but it's an ongoing issue.
Well, yeah, there's
So would you
obviously
still take
connections
the
and
leverage?
continuity between different projects and everything. It's a sunk cost. If you've already invested $190 million in the San Pedro Creek project, then, and it only takes $10 million to have completion and have return on the investment, then obviously you're gonna go forward with that. But I'm just attacking it from a business mindset about what are those sunk costs, what's the partnership, what's the investment that it's being asked of county taxpayers, and then what's the return? And obviously the return can be subjective sometimes, and what that would be.
Patrick, you got it.
One of the, you talked about housing and reducing property taxes. One of the things impacting homeowners is the development of apartment complexes, especially in extraterritorial jurisdictions. There's one going on right now that the city just voted on and passed, even though they don't have direct authority over. That's going on in the commercial, up 281. So where do you see the county stepping in and helping protecting private property owners' rights versus the development that's needed to help house people and balance that?
Yeah, that's part of why I think we need the housing trust, because I think that the unincorporated areas have been moving almost on their own. And we have not had any kind of opportunity to be the guiding force. I honestly believe that it falls on us to be responsible to monitor and to schedule and to plan how things are going to go in the future before the developers get in there and make what they want to make. I'm not going to say that developers are bad. We need them, but we have to make sure that we are the ones who make the plan of where things are going to go.
Right now, the county does not have any power to do that, but does it?
Right, that's part of what I was talking about with the different legislation that has to happen in Austin.
Yeah, no zoning. County
That's
can't
right.
zone. That's right.
Yeah.
A follow-up question to the good question that was asked in the back. I think every politician needs to be prepared to answer what is their philosophy of government? What is the role of government? And I'll make a quick comment. There was a city in Indiana, I read the article, it's very interesting. Their budget was overflowing and they were in the red. And the city manager said, stop. He opened up the yellow pages and they had all the department heads say, if your job can be found in the private sector, you're not needed. And they went through the yellow pages and identified all manner of private business that the city was performing. And he slowly eliminated those departments and let private business provide the services. All the things that you're dreaming of. It reminds me of the recent CPS windfall. And there was a debate in our city council. And I'm glad to say that my councilman voted the way I wanted the money to be handled. The overflow is going to be returned to the ratepayers. But there were members of our council that were rubbing their hands together in joy, thinking, just imagine all the great things we can do with all this money. And it makes me think,
Now we're speechifying, let's ask.
I'll be quick. It makes me think, why not add $30 a month to our bills forever? And you could do great things. And so I would ask you, do you have a philosophy on what the role of government, I know it's rather broad, but in generally, do you think we should have housing and provide housing for our citizens, provide their medical care, provide their transportation, provide their food, provide for this? I mean, the list is endless, what people need.
Question asked.
Should we do it?
You get that one first.
Well, I'm generally a semi-government conservative. Government has a role, public safety, for example, the common good, the tragedy of the commons, an economic term, right? Things that require the community to come together and fund as a community, because otherwise they won't be funded, the services won't be provided. But, for everything outside that, and obviously there's creep into to many different areas over time, whether it's at the local level, state level, or federal level, where, should we be doing that? I think the question is, every time, there's an idea about this, well, is this the right role for government, or some, young or not young entrepreneur out there comes up with the idea and says, hey, there is a gap here for service, and I could fill it, and I could make a bunch of money probably in filling it too, because there's a need, and I'm going to fill that need. And so that's part of our free market system. But I do think, government has to be careful about entering spaces that the private sector can do a better job in filling that need. And so I'll just leave it there.
So back when I was studying public administration, a guy named Cap Weinberg was saying that there should be zero-based budgeting. In other words, every year you start with zero, and then you prove yourself, you prove your department, and then they allocate money. And back in the 70s, that's when I was learning, I thought that was pretty cool. You come in and you start with zero. What is the reason for this, and what needs to be done? I have been in favor of us going department by department once we get in there. And that's what I intend to propose. I've talked to some of the candidates about this, as well as some of the sitting county commissioners, that an audit in each department, whether you call it an audit or zero-based budgeting, is the right way to start. I think we start with, okay, what are the needs? And then what kind of money do we have for those needs? And if we can't meet those needs, then who are our friends? Who can do this? Meaning other governments or other entities. And so honestly, I am with you on that. I know that's impossible to really do right, because it never became part of what we do in government. Government just continued to bloat usually, and mission creep happens everywhere. I don't like mission creep. I don't think anybody does. And I think it's time for us to say, what is it that has to be done, and then how can we do it? That's my philosophy.
Real quick, the state has a sunset commission. And so every state agency gets reviewed every 10 years. They alternated, so my licensing board was combined with another licensing board for efficiency. Perhaps the county could do some type of sunset commission.
Well, that's similar to what I was talking about. Having to create, except
Okay.
that's a termination.
One more question, then we're gonna give them a chance to wind up and summarize. Bill?
One comment on a speech, if I for a minute.
No.
One thing is that we're 54th in parks in the country, okay? But my question here is, about 10 years ago when we had the apartment fire and the seniors were killed in the fire, we passed a law to make sure the seniors live in facilities with sprinklers. And Betty and I talked about this. We have seniors downtown that are in hotels that can't get out of bed, and if they had a fire, they would burn up. You guys can't control the city, but the county fire marshal said that we're gonna put off implementing this law in the county and the city for 10 years. And we still have not implemented the law. What would you do as a county commissioner to get the fire marshal off High Center and get this law implemented, to take care of the seniors and the other people? We have apartment fires all over the place and people are displaced. So, okay? So what would you do with the fire marshal to get him off High Center and get this law implemented that was passed and it's not being enacted? Okay?
I'd invite you to come and meet with him. I think you made an excellent case. And honestly, I think that this is a perfect situation where we bring in people and give those folks who are responsible an understanding of how serious this problem is. And it's,
What would you do to get the law enforced, though? I mean, he said arbitrarily it'd be 10 years before we even implement the law. And you're a county commissioner. What do you tell the county fire marshal? How do you get him to implement the law?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I think, you know, Susan makes a good point. Obviously, part of this is just citizen engagement. You'd be amazed at what, you know, 20 people showing up at your councilman's office or commissioner's office and voicing your opinion and pushing these kinds of issues. You know, I'd love to know more about the issue and why he said 10 years. Is that because he doesn't have the resources, he thinks it's too costly, he thinks that, you know, it's not an issue? I don't know what's driving that thought process, right? But I'd like to learn more about it, because if there's ways that we can address it, you know, and make our community safer, especially for seniors, then I'd be for it.
Okay, one last question, then we're gonna wrap it up. Go ahead.
For areas of the county that are outside incorporated areas, what changes would you make in county services and regulations?
That's a good one.
Yeah, so we talked about the housing issue and whether there's a change there. I think, you know, Susan mentioned it earlier, and I support as well, having ex officio member on SAWS or CPS going forward. And those are some things that I think, you know, are important. You know, when the law changed around annexation, I think that dramatically shifted the future development in these major counties, these urban counties. And so, you know, if the city of San Antonio can't expand because folks are not willing to allow themselves to be annexed, then all that growth is going to take place in the county. So the issues that we see there today are only going to be magnified further over the next 10, 20 years. And so I think that it's come time to address some of these things and start thinking about them, because they're going to become more and more of an issue going forward.
But that doesn't then require the state legislature to act, because they have to give the county that power to control it, and you don't have it now. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's right.
it's no fun agreeing with your opponent. Yeah, I had an opportunity to talk to several different house parties out in the unincorporated areas, and so much of the conversation was water and resources that they would like to see that we can't deliver at the moment. And honestly, there's a temptation to say, well, you chose to live here, and these were your services that you knew when you were going to be moving in there. But that's kind of cold, because now we have all these people who have needs, and I honestly feel like the county should be the friendly place that they want to have these services taken care of, but we have no voice right now with SAWS or with CPS. And I think probably ex officio is a nice way to put it, but I'd say probably active involvement at this point, before we go any further, is mandatory, because these issues, the water issue in particular, are very serious. I can't solve all the problems tonight.
Thank you. Okay, what we're going to do now is give, because I try to get everybody out in an hour and a half, and we're about to run the clock out. So I will now give you 3 minutes each to wrap up, summarize, say whatever you want, and we'll start with Brandon.
Thanks for hanging around, and you know, I'll be honest, I think this has been the most robust discussion that we've had in this race, and so thank you for your questions. I would like to, you know, unless I run into you at the polls, which is always a possibility, I want to say I thank you for the race you've run. It's been a clean race about ideas and not personalities, and I appreciate that, so thank you. You know, I'm coming from a business background, I'm coming from a military background. I think that my business experience brings you know, some skills and experience that would be directly applicable to our local government. And that's what I want to do. I want to help solve these problems. I want to listen. I want to learn about these problems. Nobody is going to be an expert, unless they've been a county commissioner for years, is going to be an expert on these issues on day one. But you got to be willing to listen, learn, and as you get smart, be able to solve some of these problems for our community. And that's what I want to do. I will just mention, because I forgot to mention in the opening, you know, I do have a quantitative economics degree from the Naval Academy. I have a master's in stats from Texas A&M, and I also have my MBA in business economics and public policy. So all of those degrees, yes, I saw that face. I'm done with school, I promise, no more degrees. But all of that, I think, is important when we think about these big problems and the big business of county government here in Bexar County. I would also like to just point out that I have been endorsed by the Deputy Sheriff's Association of Bexar County, which I'm very honored to have the support from the law enforcement community, and I want to work hard for all of you in this role if elected, and I hope that I will see you all again very soon. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Susan?
So, I've been living here for 38 years. I came down to work with a Fortune 500 company, Hart Hanks Communications. We've made our home here. The companies that I've worked with have given me great insights into a wide range of concerns in our community. The community service I've done has given me the kind of insights to know that no one organization or individual can solve everything, but that we all must be together if we're going to get through what we've been through in the last couple of years. My personal commitment to you is that I intend to be the kind of open door that my mentor, John Courage, has been in terms of listening and then quick turnaround. And that doesn't mean just the email that says, we received your email and we'll get on it. What I want to do is I want to amplify all of our voices. And I want to make sure that if I go to a door, somebody goes, well, I don't know what the county commissioner does. And when I ask them, what are the issues that are concerned to you? They go, I don't know. Because we have to know what the issues are so that we can all be involved in solving them. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we haven't really mentioned is I really have been involved in mental health issues. I've also been involved with a group called sacred.org that basically online, if you haven't seen it, sacrd.org, it provides a wide range of services and it's all location-based. It sounds like a little project, but what I found when I was the president of the board of this during COVID is that we are all involved in so many different things that we can't be experts in all of them, but when we are together, then we provide an expert service. And so that's what I want to be. I'm going to be the person who, when you call up, goes, that's fascinating, I want to learn about that, or I'm so sorry about that, but let's solve it together. And when I said I would bring you to talk with him, that is exactly what I live for, is us having the dialogue, so that when there is a government problem, we don't sit back and go, well, that was terrible, but we go out and solve it together. My history of 50 years of activism, which I'm sure some of you know about, continues. And I will be committed regardless of what happens in 2 weeks. I pretty much can guess you've already voted, but if you haven't, I just want you to know, regardless of who you voted for, I will serve you and I will answer you when you call. Thank you.
Very much, Susan. And we are going to now have a very short continuation of, we have a couple more speakers. You all are welcome to sit and listen, or you can sneak out. We certainly appreciate having you, and I think it was a very good evening. Perhaps you mentioned it, which good question. I think this group always has a good participation, and we've done this over the years. By the way, this is the 25th anniversary